Just before we start the episode, here's a trailer for another podcast. If you like what you hear, go and check it out.
Monsters, demons, ghosts, and
Oh my, I didn't see you there. You really spooked me. Just like my podcast, The Paranormal Burrito. We're a weekly podcast featuring a new guest every episode. So join us for fun and spooky stories. If you have a spooky story you'd like to share, email us at theparanormalburrito@gmail.com. The Paranormal Burrito, your true stories.
Hi, I'm Laura,
And I'm Joe.
and this is Crime Divers.
Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Lorisode.
Hello, it's me.
That's you.
It's me.
So, just before we start, I just wanted to let you know, if anybody remembers, I did a case a while back now. It was of Helen Bailey. She was an author, and her partner Ian Stewart murdered her.
Yes, that's right.
So after that, they decided to look into the murder of his first wife had died.
All right.
Which they thought was, I can't remember what it was, but natural. It was something natural anyway. But they were looking in to see if he had murdered her. Mm-hmm. So he was charged with murder. I can't remember if I said that in the last episode, in the episode that I did, but I just read the other day there that there's actually been a trial date set.
Right.
But it's not until the 14th of March 2022.
Oh wow.
So it's next year.
Over a year away.
Yeah, so I just want to say, because I did say it on the episode, which must have been a few months ago now. I said that I would update everybody with what was happening. So
Right.
there's not going to be an update for over a year yet.
Oh no.
Hopefully our podcast will still be going.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So if we're still here,
Mm-hmm.
we'll let everybody know. If
Okay.
not, they'll have to Google it.
Exactly.
So what is your episode called?
My Lorisode this week is called Kill Me If You Can.
Kill Me If You Can. And where are we? Where in the world are we?
Well, we're actually closer to home again this week, so we're actually back in the UK in Manchester.
Manchester.
So not too far down the road.
Right, I hope they're okay, because at the moment, obviously we record in advance, so this won't be going out for a few weeks, but at the moment in Manchester people are being evacuated from their homes because of the flooding. See it on the news.
God, yeah, right, yeah.
We've just got snow at the moment. It's quite deep.
It's very deep snow.
It's deep enough to build a snowman.
I did build one this morning with my daughter.
Did I say a deeper snowman?
Deep to build a snow. I don't know.
I don't know what I said there, but yeah.
It is a snowman building day.
Yes,
and
it is.
I did build one with my daughter this morning. So.
Yeah, but I noticed there was warnings down, I think like Yorkshire and that as well. There was like flood warnings, and there's people.
We
in
always
Great...
get it so bad down there. I mean, we're
They
very
do.
lucky up here. We don't really get flooding that bad. I mean, we get a bit of flooding, but never anything.
Can
as
you
bad as
remember that time when we had flooding, and me and John picked you up in the van?
Oh, it was like thunder as well, was it not?
Yeah, and we got stuck, and we didn't realise on the bypass there was a massive big puddle of water, and we
Yeah.
actually got stuck, and the water was coming up into the van.
And this was when you didn't really have back seats in the van, and I remember he pulled up to the police, and I had to hide under the blankets so they didn't see me.
But that was terrifying, because there was a big lorry coming along, and we were
'cause
stuck.
I think we skidded off a bit. didn't we?
Yeah, end up in the big puddle. Anyway, that's
I know.
totally off topic.
Totally nothing to do with it. But yes, hopefully the people of Manchester are.
Yeah,
okay.
hopefully they're okay, and hopefully their properties are okay.
Well, I hope so. But yeah, so this is a story of two ordinary Manchester teens whose friendship led to one of the most unusual and bewildering criminal cases in British history. So I've got a bizarre one for you.
Wow, and well, have I heard of it? I don't think so. It doesn't.
I hadn't heard of it. I mean, there's a surprise. I mean, I don't hear anything, but I came across it and I was like, this is going to be quite interesting.
Okay.
And very bizarre, and I actually would probably say unbelievable.
Right. Okay.
But it is all true. It did happen. So you may think, really?
So this is going to be like my couple of episodes that I've had that you're like, nah, I wouldn't believe that.
Yeah. Well, see, I would never have believed this, but it is true. So
Okay. Looking forward to it. Should we dive in?
Yes, let's dive in. And I actually did watch a documentary on it as well, which I know. I don't normally watch documentaries too often when it comes to cases. I just do the research.
That's usually my job. I usually do watch the documentaries.
But I did that. This one intrigued me that much that I decided to watch the documentary on it. And to be fair, it did throw up a couple of things that I hadn't been able to, when I was researching, I didn't actually find. So it was worth watching. Okay, so this starts just before 8 p.m. on a Sunday, the 29th of June 2003. So not too long ago, but a fair while ago. The police in Manchester were called to a stabbing. It had taken place down an alley behind a row of shops in a place called Altrincham. Altrincham, yep. It's a town in Greater Manchester.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
The police had arrived on the scene to find a 14-year-old boy fighting for his life. He was bleeding to death with multiple stab wounds.
Oh, wow.
They came across a 16-year-old boy, and he had been the one who'd actually alerted the police, so he'd phoned the police.
Right.
And just so you know, throughout the story, for their protection, the true identity of the boys have never actually been revealed.
Oh, because they're too young.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, well, they'll be older now, but I still couldn't find their names on it. I did actually search to find their names, because this was in 2003.
Maybe they've got some kind of protection.
Yeah, so I did try to see if their names had been released since. I understand at the time, maybe not, but I still couldn't find their names anywhere, so I'm assuming that their identities have never been revealed.
Right.
So we'll call them John. He's the one that was stabbed, so he's the 14-year-old boy.
Right.
And Mark, the one that phoned the police.
The 16-year-old.
Yeah, he's the 16-year-old. So it's John and Mark that we'll call them.
Okay.
Mark, the one that phoned them, he was quite shaken by what I just witnessed. He told police that he saw a hooded man with a knife stab his friend.
Oh, God.
For no reason. And then he just ran off. And at first, the police officer believed them. The investigation was like any other investigation they'd done. The police appealed for witnesses, and they also checked the CCTV footage of the surrounding area. So 10 days later, the case actually took quite a surprise turn, because they had looked through the CCTV footage, and eventually they'd actually come across footage of the alleyway entrance, and it actually showed that no one else had entered it except John and Mark.
Oh.
So Mark's account of saying that there had been somebody come and stab him clearly wasn't true, because there was nobody else shown to have been there. So Mark, of course, became a suspect. And after he was shown, because he was actually shown the CCTV footage, he basically came out with the truth, and he had admitted that he was the one that stabbed John.
Oh, well, why would... Well, I'm assuming you're going to tell me, but why would you stab your friend?
Yes, well, good question, which I will explain. So, it clearly didn't take much persuasion in the confession of it. I think, probably seeing the CCTV footage, she probably felt like, well, he couldn't really lie about that, because it was obvious that nobody else had been there. So of course they did ask what his motive was. This is where it gets a bit strange. He said that he had been asked to kill John by a British spy mistress called Janet Dobbingson.
What?
I know.
So a 16-year-old has been asked by a spy to kill a 14-year-old.
Yeah, his friend.
Right. So why on earth has what has this 14-year-old done to deserve to be killed by a spy?
You will find out. And he had been talking to her via an internet chat room.
Okay.
So do you remember internet chat rooms?
So when were we?
2003.
Right. So they must have been. That must have been before Facebook and all that.
It wasn't too long before Facebook, I don't think.
I do remember internet chat rooms.
Yeah, because I used to go on internet chat rooms when I was younger
as
well, and I actually met up with somebody from an internet chat room with my friend, and I mean, I think back now and I'm like, oh my God, I would never do that now.
Yeah, I remember.
Again, it's one of those things where different times, different scenarios, I suppose.
Yeah, but back then, we didn't, because it was new.
Yeah. Like
chat rooms and things like that, like the internet, that was all new, like, we would never have thought that it was bad to go and meet people.
No. I remember giving like somebody like the phone number at mum and dad's, and they phoned me and we would chat on the phone and stuff. Like, it was with my friend as well, so it wasn't just me. But I think
a lot of people did that though. That was a way. It was like a new way of making friends, wasn't it? Because obviously before the internet, the only way you make friends is, well, if you had a pen pal.
Yeah.
Or like, friends from school.
Yeah.
But it was a new way of making friends.
I know, but I think no, I wouldn't do it now.
So this is how
yeah, so
the boys met in the chat room.
Yes,
right. Yeah.
Which I'll tell you obviously.
Yeah, okay.
But basically he had met this Janet Dobson on the internet chat room as well.
Right.
And she had said that if he completed his mission, he'd become a member of the British Secret Service. He would receive, he would receive £80 million.
80 million pounds.
Yep, £80 million.
What the fuck?
Exactly. He would meet Tony Blair, who was the current Prime Minister at that point. And he would also meet the Queen.
Okay.
And receive sexual favours from Janet, who was a 44-year-old married woman who lived a double life. I know I just laughed there, but I mean...
Well, can I butt in? Mm-hmm. Right. This boy is 16 years old.
Yeah.
And he's been asked to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And then he's going to meet the Prime Minister and the Queen, right?
And become part of the British Secret Service.
Right, yeah, but like the Prime Minister and the Queen. These are like these, top people in the country. Why would they want to meet a murderer?
That is a very good question, actually. I never actually thought of it like that.
Why would they want to meet a murderer? And, I'm not being funny, but if she's 44 and married, how does she know that he's going to be interested? I mean...
Yeah, I know, this is what I mean, it's quite unbelievable, and I'll tell you now...
this is all fake, I'm assuming, so...
I mean, obviously, this is all going to get even bizarrer, I mean, I think this is bad, this is just the start of it.
Okay, like, I'm kind of starting to feel how you feel when I'm the one that's telling the story.
Oh, but I know, this is like, I couldn't believe what I was writing and reading, and I was like, what is this? But... to Mark, I mean, this was very real. So let's not forget, to him it was real. He believed everything that he was being told and more as well. So
I get that. I mean, we've had these stories in the past where to us, because we know it's a true crime story, then we know that it's not real and it is really bizarre to us. But you have to remember that in that moment, in that time, it is real to the person that's happening to.
Exactly.
Of course.
So Mark, he was starting to be taken in by this. He had been given a code name, which was in numbers, so it was 47695, and he had also been provided with an abort code 6969 should the mission be cancelled.
6969.
I don't know if there was any relevance to that, but I did realise, I was like, 6969, that could...
obviously that's got a relevance to our dirty minds, but it might not... Yeah, okay.
And it just seems really unbelievable. I mean, already you're thinking, that what is going on here? So Mark, he was very naive. He believed every twist and turn of the fantasy that had been created for him online. So investigators actually seized Mark's computer and they found 58,000 lines of text within the chat room.
Wow.
As they looked through all the text, they actually initially thought that they were looking for a paedophile, pretending to be Janet and then grooming Mark.
Right,
so that's what they thought initially.
Right.
Was that Janet was somebody else.
Who's grooming him.
Yeah, grooming him. Basically, that's what they thought. It's not quite how it went.
That's not the case then.
Not quite.
Right, okay.
So basically, for the past 6 months, Mark had communicated with a variety of people in the online chat room. It was a site actually dedicated to Manchester teenagers.
Right.
There was a few people in it, so there's a few significant people. One was a girl called Rachel. She was a 16-year-old girl who Mark had grown close to. Then there was John, who's the victim, the one that was stabbed.
Right.
John. And she was Rachel's stepbrother.
He was Rachel's stepbrother.
Is that what I said? Sorry. He was Rachel's stepbrother.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So John was Rachel's stepbrother.
Right, so they're brother-sister. Yeah. Right.
Then there was Kevin. Kevin was the creepy, self-proclaimed stalker. Apparently he...
You sure he's not a paedophile?
Well, I know exactly, that's what I thought at the time. And then there was Janet, the spy mistress. There was a lot of other people who had also come and gone on the online chat room. They were the significant ones.
Right.
So
I can tell I'm just going to get confused here.
I know, I mean, like, as I was going through it, I was like, really? This really happens? But again, to Mark, this was all...
it was real. We'll have to remember, we have to respect that.
Yeah, exactly. To him, this was all, true as it's, as it's written. So Mark himself, he was actually at college and he worked part-time in a restaurant. He did okay at school. He wasn't the most academic person. He was never in trouble and he had a close relationship with his family. So he was a fairly ordinary teenager. Yeah. His time online though, it began spiralling out of control. So he was spending upwards of about 12 hours a day on the chat room and he just gradually became more and more obsessed with it. So that's,
right.
if he was at home in his spare time, which was constantly
That's all he was doing.
basically, which I can remember myself being quite addicted to going on the chat rooms. I used to Dad would be like, Dad, can I go on the computer? So it was obviously a thing back then, but clearly
I can remember spending hours on it. Yeah.
But for him, it became a major obsession. So the chat in the room, that sounds funny, the chat in the room, but the chat that they had basically included usual teenage topics such as sports, movies, clothing, sex and masturbation.
Well, they're teenagers.
They do talk about that sort of stuff,
No judgment here.
Exactly. And Mark had actually initially fallen in love with Rachel.
Alright.
So they must have been talking quite a lot.
So they hadn't met yet,
No,
they were just talking.
Met.
Right.
They were just chatting away, talking. So he clearly was falling in love with her. But their attempts to meet up in real life actually never worked out, so they never did meet up.
Right.
And it actually took a dark turn when Kevin, the creepy guy,
right,
who just as a sort of thing that he made him stand out, he actually only wrote his text in pink because he said he was gay, and he admitted to having a foot fetish. Just as a wee side note there.
Okay.
So Kevin, the creepy guy.
No,
this is why he's creepy. So yeah.
I don't think that we really need to know about his foot fetish, but okay, Kevin, that's fine.
Well, the only reason I mention it is because it comes back in a minute. But basically,
this is a very random thing to mention, isn't it? Not for you to mention, I mean for him to mention.
Yeah. He declared that he'd kidnapped Rachel.
Oh, okay.
And he would rape and kill her.
Oh, wow.
Unless Mark recorded himself masturbating with his feet showing.
Oh, God.
Via a webcam.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's why his feet fetish.
Right. So, this is that important to you, that having this boy masturbating with his feet showing, is that important that if you don't see that, you're going to rape and kill somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin.
Exactly. I know. I found that really bad. But Mark, he was so convinced of Kevin's threats.
He believed that. So did he actually do it then?
Yeah, he agreed to do it. So
that is kind of like being groomed though.
I know.
Isn't it? I mean, I know you were saying you were talking about Janet being the one who was they thought was maybe grooming him. But that's grooming.
Yeah, totally.
Isn't it? So that's bad.
I know. So he agreed to do it.
Oh.
But then, so what I had researched was that at that point Rachel was then apparently released by Kevin, but then she would mysteriously disappear from the chat room not long after. But then when I watched the documentary, it said in there that supposedly she was raped and murdered by Kevin, so I don't really know what it was. But
there wasn't really a Rachel.
Well, there wasn't really, yeah.
Right,
so I mean,
okay,
it didn't really happen, but I'm not sure whether...
In Kevin's world it happened, or not Kevin?
Mark.
In
Mark's world it happened, yes. So
right, but we know there wasn't Rachel and she wasn't raped.
No, this was all really him.
Okay.
Yeah, so, So I wasn't really sure. But then, so once Rachel had disappeared from the chat room, Mark then grew close to her stepbrother, John.
Right.
They actually did meet up in person.
Right.
And they hung out quite a bit, so they became
friends.
Yeah, and it was after that Janet entered the chat room. So Janet hadn't been in the chat room up until this point.
Right, okay.
So she came in at this point. She, again, randomly, she always wrote in capital letters. And then Janet convinced Mark that she was a spy and he was the reason that she'd joined the chat room to recruit him into MI5. Over the next few weeks, Janet continued to lie. Mm-hmm. She convinced Mark to carry out tests to prove his worthiness before he'd be given his first official mission.
I'm scared about what these tests are.
Actually, the tests themselves aren't actually that bad. So on one occasion, she asked him to get John out of school as his life was in danger, according to Janet. So she had basically told him that his friend John was like this super important person who just happened to be his friend. But they referred to him, Janet referred to him as James Bell rather than John.
Okay.
So he was like this super important person. His life was going to be in danger. So
this 14-year-old.
This 14-year-old, yes.
I mean, if it had been like an older person, but this is a child we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So the test that she asked him to do was get John out of school as his life was in danger. According to Janet, as I just said to you, John was the most important person in the country, and the reason why he was the most important person in the country was apparently he knew the code to access a secret safe hidden at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean that only a few countries knew about.
And a 14-year-old
Yeah.
knows this.
Yeah. I know. So this is what makes me wonder though, is that at any, because obviously from the research that I did, I just wondered if at any point did Mark not ask John about this? Like, did Mark not discuss this with John?
Well, I'm assuming, obviously I haven't done the research, so I don't know, but I'm assuming that Janet has told him that he's not allowed to discuss it with John.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say in any of the research.
No, because I just totally interrupted you there, sorry, and talked over you. But he can't speak to John about it because he was recruited.
Oh, at MI5. Oh, yeah, so maybe he can't, maybe he's been told he can't discuss it.
No, because, like, if he's the one who ends up stabbing John, then John can't know that he's working with the MI5. He needs, or what was it, MI5?
Yeah, MI5, yeah, MI5.
So John has to think that Mark is just his pal and nothing more than that, so he can't ask John about it.
Yeah, that's true.
But,
yeah,
I know he's only 16, but it's...
Again, a secret safe hidden at the bottom of the Atlantic
Yeah,
Ocean.
to believe that a 14-year-old would know that information.
And why, out of all the people in the world, does
exactly,
he know about it?
yeah.
Again, you know, for us, it's easy for us to sit here and say, but he was totally taken in by this.
Well, yeah,
totally
I mean, you
believed
have to
everything.
respect that, the fact that he believed it. This was his reality.
Yeah. So before I get any further, John's mum actually came onto the chat room herself at one point, because I think she must have been getting a bit concerned about John being on it all the time as well.
Right.
As well as Mark being on it, John was obviously on this chat room all the time. So I know that John's mum did come in on the chat room just to see what was going on and stuff like that.
Right.
But I don't think nothing major had flagged up to her at that point, because I think this was kind of before it got really more bizarre. Like,
It's still going to get more bizarre, is it?
Oh, this is not finished yet. No, definitely not. So, Mark totally obeyed this, and he convinced John's school that he had a dentist appointment.
Right.
So he managed to get John out of school.
Okay, fair enough.
Which, to be fair, I don't think that's a very...
It's not that hard to get a kid out of school.
Exactly not. So as each day went by, the fantasy that Janet was creating just became even wilder, even more unbelievable. Yet Mark did not question it. He was that infatuated with this woman that he just did not question it at all.
Okay.
Again, you know, he's obviously totally taken in by this. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so another test that Mark was asked to carry out came from the then Prime Minister Tony Blair via Janet. Tony Blair wanted John to be seen as gay.
Right. Did he not wonder why the Prime Minister wanted him to be gay? Like,
so the Prime Minister wanted John to be seen as gay. Therefore, wanted John to be seen as gay. Therefore, Mark was to carry out oral sex on John to complete the test. Mark, of course, did it.
Oh God.
So Mark actually carried out oral sex.
So it is being groomed then.
Yeah, I would say
by Janet, because Janet's the one that's...
Yeah, but then again, this is where I'm confused, because at this point, because I mean, we're going to know more about it, it'll make a bit more sense once I reveal even more. But before, you know, at this point, if I was you, I'm thinking, so if Mark was to carry out oral sex on John, what's John saying?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That's what I was thinking. Is John okay with that?
Exactly, because then again, you know, if we're saying that John doesn't know about Mark's Secret Service things and stuff, then, like, you know, that's why I don't understand how have they not had a conversation.
Well, maybe John's gay. Does it not say that because maybe he was gay and Mark knows that?
Well, maybe, but I don't know.
Or maybe they were just having a wee experiment because, you know,
yeah, but it just seems to me like if that's what Mark's been asked to do and John's happy for him to do that.
Yeah, but how do we know that John was happy for him to do that?
Well, this is true. But I'm going to explain more, so it will make more sense.
I still think he's been groomed though.
Eventually, the time came when Janet asked Mark to carry out his mission. So he'd complete these 2 tests, and now it was time for the mission.
Right, okay.
So the chat room conversation basically went like this. So Janet, quote, said, "Could you stab someone?"
God.
Mark then, quote, said, "I haven't really thought about it."
Well, obviously.
Janet then said, "Well, think, please." Mark said, "Okay."
Oh, see, no, like, if somebody starts speaking to me like that, I'd be like, okay, bye.
Janet then told Mark that the once valuable asset, valuable asset John was now suffering a brain tumour.
Okay.
And needed to be put out of his misery.
Oh my god.
If Mark didn't complete the mission, Janet would lose her job and national security would be at risk. So
I would be saying, I don't give a fuck about your job. Like, I'm not going to kill somebody just so that you keep your job.
Exactly. So you think that's all bizarre, right? There is one last bizarre twist to this story.
God, hit me with it.
So I'll tell you basically what happened on the actual day of the stabbing. So that was Sunday the 29th of June 2003. Mark had been out with John, met up with John, and he'd bought a kitchen knife under the pretense that it was actually for his mum. His mum had asked him to buy him a knife.
Okay.
He...
Was he allowed to buy a knife? I think
Well, he
he
was 16. Well, unless he was just looked older, maybe, or...
Or maybe I'm wrong and you...
Or maybe he brought it. I can't remember if he brought it or bought it.
Oh, it doesn't
But
matter.
anyway, he had a knife that basically he had told John that it was for his mum.
Right, okay.
And he carefully avoided the CCTV cameras that Janet had warned him about, and he entered the alley with John. He stabbed him twice, once in the stomach and once in the chest. And then he actually waited 20 minutes before calling the police.
Oh.
The reason for the delay was actually it had been an order from Janet. And
To not phone for 20 minutes?
yeah, because basically they were saying that the delay had been an order Janet had provided as it would give John enough time to bleed to death.
Oh. Oh. Okay.
And then Janet was apparently going to be the first on the scene after he'd phoned the police disguised as a detective who would ensure Mark wasn't arrested.
Right.
But, as we know, well, as I would tell you, Janet wasn't real. Janet never arrived. So Janet did not turn up to whisk Mark away to protect him from being arrested. After the investigators had poured through the thousands of lines from the chat room text, they actually realised that most of the people on there were fake.
Right.
So the Rachel, the Kevin,
right,
were
they were all the
fake.
same person.
Yeah, basically, they were all fake. And then they realised that a number of the people had actually used the same variation of a word. So the word maybe, they had all written it as my by, so MYBYE.
Right.
But it was meant to say maybe, but they had all written it that way, so that kind of flagged up to them that these people were the same person.
Right.
And Janet...
Who's the person?
Oh, wait till you find out. And Janet had used it, and so had John.
I've got an idea who the person is, but then I'm thinking it can't be right.
Well, I think you could be right, because we know that Mark and John met up, so we know John's real.
Yeah.
So the police concluded that John was the mastermind behind it all of it.
Well, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. But how... But...
Yeah, he had been...
But he's the one who's been stabbed.
Mm-hmm. He had been every character in that chat room. He had basically made up the whole fantasy that led to his stabbing, his own stabbing.
But why? So he wanted to be stabbed then?
Yep, basically, yeah. He concocted all this for him to be stabbed. I'll tell you why.
Right, okay, sorry. I'm just confused.
Yeah. So John did recover from his near fatal wounds. He didn't die.
Oh,
no, he didn't die. He did recover from his wounds. He was actually... Mark was charged with attempted murder because at the end of the day he did stab him.
Of course, yeah.
And John was also charged though. So John was charged with inciting his own murder. And in legal terms, it was unique in British criminal history. So it was just basically something that had never happened before. I mean, you were charged for your own murder. He was charged for inciting his own murder.
Well, sorry, it should have been, because he's incited somebody else to murder him.
And actually, when it all came out in court, Mark himself, he couldn't believe he'd been so gullible. Like and up until that point, like even when he'd been arrested, he still didn't know that this was all John at that point. God. So while he was waiting for a trial, he actually didn't know. And I bet you as soon as he found out, he was like...
And
when it came to court, he was like... how could I be so gullible? Like, how could I have fallen for this? And I've got to be honest, at points I'm thinking, how did you fall for that? But, unless you're in that moment and that thing, I mean, he obviously did believe it to be all true.
I'm still confused though. Mm-hmm. Why did John want Mark to stab him?
I'm going to tell you now.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought you
I'm going to tell you now.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was... Yeah, so why did John do it? And, he was by all accounts an ordinary teenager. Nothing to suggest that he would ever get himself mixed up in something so terrible. The answer to why is actually still up for debate, so I don't have a definitive answer why. But there has been a claim that John had actually fallen in love with Mark to the point where he knew that Mark wouldn't reciprocate.
Right.
So we do think that maybe John was gay.
Right, okay.
But he thinks that Mark wouldn't reciprocate. And if the truth was ever revealed, the only way it could end was, in his head, was suicide. So basically he was like, I'll just get somebody to murder me.
Wow.
So but that's not a definitive answer.
A definite, right.
That's basically just the sort of claim that it's been said. And then Judge David Madison said when sentencing, quote, offences of this kind under normal circumstances would result in an extremely lengthy custodial sentence, but these could not be described as any normal circumstances. So Mark and John were actually only given supervision orders. John got 3 years and Mark 2 years, and they were all ordered never to meet again, and they could only go on the internet with supervision and never on the chat rooms. So neither of them ended up in prison because of it. Which, I mean, for Mark...
That's a bit of a hard one, isn't it? Because, Mark did actually commit the crime, but the way he was groomed to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word.
I think he was. I mean, he was... Because, he completely believed this chat room, and he completely believed what he was being asked to do, and he fell for it hook, line and sinker.
I think he's maybe a bit of a victim as well.
I feel like he is a bit of a victim. Yeah. I mean, I don't feel anything bad towards Mark personally. I feel like...
No, it's...
I mean, yes, he did carry out the act of stabbing. So, I mean, you're like, well... I mean...
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a hard one. But John, I mean...
Well, I'm sorry, but if you want to kill yourself... Well, you want to die, because you're not killing yourself, is it? You want to die, then, well, first of all, go and seek help. Because,
Yeah.
But if you do, why get somebody else to do it? If you want to do it, I'm sorry, do it yourself.
Well, exactly.
Like, why would you make somebody else do it? And to go to such an elaborate plan.
I think, like, from what I got from, like, the documentary and stuff like that, I don't think that John... He couldn't believe that Mark was falling for it, basically. He couldn't actually believe that he was doing all these things that he was asking him to do. So I think it probably did just spiral out of control a bit as well.
Yeah.
But, Nicholas Clark, one of the prosecutors, actually told the court that, this case serves as a total stark warning of the dangers of the dark side of the internet. So it just shows you, like, the internet is a positive for so many things, but it can be such a negative as well.
Definitely. And I think it still is now... Even though, we're 18 years later, and that people know a lot more of the dangers, but it still is dangerous. There is still people that are, meeting up with people online and, and...
I do wonder, because let's say, because we don't know their true identities, I mean, they're obviously going to be a lot older, they'll be well into adulthood now.
So it's 18 years later.
Yeah, exactly. So I do wonder what their thoughts would be about it now, like, how they would...
He's probably still kicking himself for being so bloody gullible. And John, well, I don't know. Hopefully he's maybe had his mental state checked out.
I know.
Because if he was suicidal, then...
Well, exactly, yeah.
Hopefully he's got the help that he needed.
I know.
But like Mark, I feel more sorry for him because, as we said, he did carry out the act. But imagine if he had killed him. And then he'd realised that it was all a
big lie.
If he'd found out, I mean, how do we know that he would have found out though?
Oh, that's true.
Because he might not have told anybody what was going on. It might not have been looked into. It might have just been a case of he killed this boy and that was that.
Because that's it. Because when he told the police his account of that, I think they were like, what? They couldn't believe it.
Yeah, of course.
It was only when they started digging into all the chat room chat that they're like, actually, this guy could be telling the truth. And it's such an unbelievable story. It's one of the most bizarre ones I've ever come across. Because I never...
Well done for finding a bizarre one.
I never expected it to be John himself that had incited his own murder.
Well, that's what I was saying, because I was at certain points in the story, I'm thinking, now this is John who's doing it. But as I say, when it comes to... But you're like, no, but John was the one who was stabbed, so it couldn't have been him. Exactly. So that's what made it confusing. But at least I had a happy ending.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
nobody died.
Exactly, and to be fair, prison maybe wouldn't... I don't think it was probably the best idea for either of them, I suppose, because I don't think it was...
Doesn't necessarily always have to be the right answer.
No, I don't think so. So I think that was probably, fair enough in the sentences that they got. And I think, that's why that they are... You don't know their identities because they've had something put in place there that means that it was never revealed just because of the such, bizarreness of the actual case.
Wow.
But yeah, so there you go. That's my very bizarre tale.
Quite proud of you.
That was a good one, eh?
I'm quite proud of you for finding a bizarre one, because
I feel like I'm going to put the expectations a bit higher now.
That's just because you've said to me before, how come you find the bizarre ones?
I know.
But there you go, you surprised me.
That was very bizarre.
Yeah.
Very random.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for listening, and if you would like to follow us on Instagram or Twitter, we are
crime_divers_pod.
We have a Facebook page,
Crime Divers Podcast.
You can email us at
crime_divers_pod@outlook.com.
You can subscribe to our YouTube,
which is just Crime Divers Podcast.
And we also have a Patreon page, which is Patreon, search for
Crime
Divers Podcast, and we have two bonus episodes a month, and what else do we have? Early access, shout-outs on the show. Prices start from as little as £1 a month. So if you would like to support us in any way, shape or form, it would be much appreciated.
Subscribe.
Subscribe, listen, no.
Review.
No.
Oh God, no. I've now got
Subscribe, subscribe, no. Rate.
Rate, subscribe, review, no?
Rate.
No, forget. Forget.
Subscribe, rate and review. That's what it's going to be from now on, right?
Right, okay.
Right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.